coming out today to pay dovid to Tati, R Eliezer dovid, Ben Yosef, Barbero, Hareni Kapuris Mashkuva. It's no secret in the family that I'm not the one to speak in public. Baruch Hashem, I have brothers and brothers-in-law that are accomplished speakers. And for Simchas, I would always rely on Tati and my father-in-law to speak. We joke in our family that the first time I've spoken publicly was at my own bar mitzvah. The second time was at Akiva's bar mitzvah in Yerushalayim. And the next time would most likely be at my grandchild's bar mitzvah. On Friday morning, as I was driving home from Shil, it occurred to me that I would be remiss if a year has gone by and I didn't speak once about Tati at the various events, and that it may be somewhat a lack of kibbud av. So as I drove home, I began dictating some thoughts onto my phone. Tati, I have no doubt that you're sitting now in the Heichel HaKodesh with your great Rebbe, Reb Nachman, as well as your many other Rebbes from whom you've shept so much inspiration and avodas Hashem, including Reb Gedalia Koenig, Skelene Rebbe, Spinker Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and so many more, as well as your father Nono Uluvashulam and your great Zaydis and Babis, of whom you spoke so much. Your many Chaverim that have departed, including Reb Chaim Man, Reb Shlomo Fried, and many more. I don't know if there are many matzeivas that have been analyzed with such great scrutiny as yours. Thank you, Beth and Shmuley, for your efforts in getting it done. Interesting to note, all our immediate instincts, including Mami's and ours, when presented with various suggested matzeiva texts by professional writers, they included typical flowery exaggerations and wording commonly used by the Welt. To put it simply, we were not impressed. Tati, these are traits we received from you. You were an ish emes, you had no tolerance for the shaker offered up by this olam ha'over. And so it came to be an Nisach matzeiva which is completely true and rather understated instead of exaggerated. And as Mami keeps saying, it's a masterpiece to be preserved for future generations. When I visited Mami some months ago, I pulled out of Tati's Sfurim Shanks the Sefer Nitte Gavriel on Hilchas Avelis to look up something. What I had found was some of Tati's handwritten notes that he had prepared for the hakomas matzeiva for his own father, Nuna Uluvashulam. He writes there that it's not minig v'sikin to recite the Nisach matzeiva berabim, but I thought it would be appropriate to go back and just mention a few anecdotes to see how Tati lived by some of these lines mentioned on this matzeiva, so that we may learn from his actions. Hopefully, I won't sound like a broken tape recorder repeating what has already been mentioned. Diktik v'esgoinen mitzvahs. Tati was an ish halucha and did lots of research and preparation for every dvar mitzvah. There's so many mitzvahs that Tati was careful with, and so much learning and achuna that he did to make sure he would fulfill the mitzvah to the best of his ability, aliba de hilchase, with all possible hedirim. The matzeiva notes that I just mentioned are themselves a great example of how Tati prepared for any dvar mitzvah. There are also pages and pages in that sefer that he had underlined and highlighted as part of his achuna. Some other examples: a few times I was with Tati in Eretz Yisrael, I could remember how Tati prepared himself for rice and kriya before going to the kaisel. It was a whole to-do. What garment does one rip? What tool does one use? What distance from the kaisel does one perform kriya? Every nuance had to be clarified. The preparations began before departing New York and would continue until he finished with the kriya. Honestly, I don't even think many people do it at all these days, but to Tati there was no negotiating. His preparing for Rosh Hashanah was already discussed at length at the Shloshim. That was almost a year-long event. Matzahs on Erev Pesach, he would check each and every matzah by hand Erev Pesach to make sure there were no kfilas. Shir payas, his yarmulke size, haircut size. He was careful not to have very long hair, yet very careful not to have a haircut shorter than size number 2 for the minimum shir payas. His tzitzis had to be tied by hand, either by himself or by someone that knew how to tie chilyas that he was always mahaded to wear. I was fortunate enough to have been taught by Tati how to tie these chilyas before my bar mitzvah, and have subsequently tied several begudim for him over the years. Agav, Tati was a big believer in hands-on mitzvahs. My Akiva tells me that he was once with Tati and Mami for a Shabbos. Tati got on the floor with some old shirts and began cutting with scissors and demonstrating to Akiva some halachas. Not a Shabbos, of course, but he encouraged those that helped other Yidden understand mitzvahs. Tati allowed himself to be interviewed via Skype by one such individual that does hands-on Torah and mitzvah videos in Eretz Yisrael. Tati's Skyped comments were viewed globally as part of an advertising campaign to spread these videos that make mitzvahs come to life. He did all he possibly can to record or video various shiurim from his Rebbe, Reb Eliezer Shlita, and had plans to share as many as he can via YouTube or by other means, simply to be mezaka others. We would spend hours together at night in Monsey uploading shiurim that were hot off the press, often recorded by him just hours before, and we would send it off to Tzfas where they would gobble them up and publish these divrei Torah. We all know that he carried around his Sansa recorder, ready to record any Breslov Chusid that has a good maisa that can be shared with the world. For years, Tati would buy us CDs of Rav Strasse's Halucha Shiurim. I always knew when I went up to the house, I would look up on the kitchen counter for the weekly Ziploc bag, one of these, with my name on the Scotch tape. Of course, one copy wasn't enough. There was one for me and one for Akiva. Since I would listen to them while on the road doing sales, Tati was worried that Akiva should always have an available copy to listen to at home. That was Tati. As a side note, when we grew up, the one thing there was always money for was sfurim. We had just to hint to Tati that we may be interested in a sefer. Tati would run out and buy it.
I like that joke.
I remember when I was a young kid, Tati bought me a set of Ein Yaakov in Yiddish and paid me 10 cents for every page that I would read. In Shiel, Tati would be makbid to always walk up to the Sefer Torah and stand throughout Kriyas Torah. When I was young, he would teach us that when walking with the father, the proper halacha is for the father to walk on the right side and the child on the left. If we were 3, he should be in the center. Akiva tells me that he taught him the same thing. Lumad Mikoil, Tati nashed from everybody. Besides the steady shiurim, he always was on the hunt for extras. He would go Motzei Shabbosim to hear Rabbi Yisuch, a friend. If Rabbi Yoel Khan was in town giving a shiur, he would be there, and many, many others. Nizah b'kvoit uve v'imoy, we all know how much he was Mekayim Kibbud Avoim. Even during his lengthy stays in Monsey, being Meshamish Reb Eliezer, he would make sure not to miss a day of calling Nana and checking in with her to update her on the daily events and happenings. Dovid b'Talmidei Chachomim, which includes Tati's Yiras HaKovod for Talmidei Chachomim, it was real. Shmuley reminded me that while we grew up, we would refer to Rav Strasser as the Dayan. He had since been elevated from Dayan to Ruv, and we would often still refer to him as the Dayan. Tati would immediately correct us and make sure we used the proper title, the Ruv. He demanded the proper respect be given. While in Eretz Yisrael for Akiva's Bar Mitzvah, my boys and I were zeicha to go with Tati to Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita for a bracha. During our visit, we were in his apartment waiting to daven mincha with him. In the room adjacent to his sfurim room sits the chair of the Steipler Gun Zecher Tzadik Avrucha. We were told that the minhag there was that it's a skillet to sit down on the chair. Tati hesitated for a while, but eventually he gathered the courage. He sat down briefly on the Tzaddik's chair with his eyes closed and with the greatest awe and fear. When he got up, he was practically trembling from the experience. Tati talked to Hashem about everything, all the time. Mommy, please forgive me for this one, but Tati had relayed this to us several times. Years ago, when he made the decision to let his beard grow in, he was concerned that it should not be too difficult for Mommy, as both Fatih and Nona didn't have beards. So he davened to Hashem that he please not give him a very long beard. Hashem answered his tefillos, and he was zeicha to have the perfect beard, the beard that gave him the very distinguished look we all knew so well. He constantly spoke to Hashem. Even when he went to the clinic for treatments, Indy was able to hear him from the other room having an entire conversation with Hashem in his own language. I believe Hindi even has a recording of it. Nachman Fried tells me that he remembers one of Tati's early trips for the Shashuna to Miran. He was a youngster and was in a taxi with him and his father, as well as a few of Tati's other chaverim. I believe Reb Shlomo and Gottlieb, and maybe Reb Aaron Waxler and Reb Chaim Man. They were traveling through the hills of the Gulul Elyon from Ram to Tzfas when they decided to ask the taxi driver to please pull over, as this looked like a perfect spot to do his baididus. The friends all got out of the car and split up into the fields to do his baididus. They agreed to meet up an hour later at the car. Sure enough, an hour later, they all returned, danced a bit, and then Tati announced that the hour was so great, how about we go back for another hour? Again, my Akiva was once by Tati when he had invited one of his usual Archim to come up for a weekday meal. Evidently, he must have known that the man could use a hot meal right now. Then there was an issue as how the guest would arrive. Tati told him not to worry, just hop into a taxi and come on over. Needless to say, Tati paid for the cab fare, round trip. We can go on and on about Tati's mitzvahs, but as said as the Shloshim, we can strive for this. Musa yagi masai lemasai avoisai. Tati, we know that whatever we do for you now can never be enough, but we also know that even the little things we do, bepshitis, a kaddish, a mishnah, a mitzvah lili nishmasku, they do all great things up there. But we ask of you, Mechila, for not giving you the proper respect. We were unable to relate to you on your level. You often seem to us as extreme as we were so far removed from your level of fremdkeit. It was almost impossible for us to keep up with your sincerity and standards. Sometimes it seemed like you were on a different galaxy than us. Indeed, you were. As Nana always said, it is given azoy an erlech. You were the real deal throughout your journey in this world, and we have so much yet to learn from you, Tati. And only now, as time goes by, do we appreciate that what we've lost. Tati, we miss your guidance and your criticism. After all, we knew you meant to put us on the straight and narrow. We miss your intellect, always being available to answer hashkufa questions we would throw your way. I remember during your last healthy year, you had come up to Muncie for a wedding. I came to say hello to you, and while we waited outside for the bus to take you back home to Borough Park, you had answered my questions on a certain mahalach of Rab Nachman that seemed to be in exact opposition to the Rambam. You straightened it all out. How many times during this year have I told my children when asked certain questions, I would call Zaidi for this one, or I'd send him an email, he'd answer in a minute. We don't have that resource anymore. Your children and Einiklach, we all miss you. Tati writes in his hakomas matzeiva notes from Shalos Achivas Minchas Eliezer and from Siddur Mana Lushan that one may request from the Nifta directly to daven on our behalf and to be Melitz Yoshe for all of us. So Tati, we all know that you sprung into action immediately, pulling strings for Shadichim and Refias for our entire Mishpucha. Please continue to do so for all your kinder and Einiklach. We should all be zeicha to follow in your footsteps. Please be Melitz Yoshe for Nana, who misses you dearly every single day, and for your siblings, Hilly and Shandi, with all their families. Last but not least, please daven for Mami, who has been doing so much chesed and mitzvahs for your neshama. Despite the very challenging year Mami has gone through, she has assumed a lot of the responsibilities that you had shouldered for the family, both in Gashmias and in Ruchnias, and we all need her healthy and well. Please daven for her so that she may continue to be a beacon of light upon all of us, and may she be zeicha to gezinta lange Yudin and rejoice in many simchas of Einiklach and Ira Einiklach ad mei v'esem. May we all be zeicha to Kitzi v'rani sheichni ufar ad bias goy tzedek v'mheiro. That's it.